In every episode, I get the guests to choose a script related to the topic we're talking about within the episode. Gary, do you want to tell us what your script is?
Yeah, my script this time around is The Proposal.
Okay, do you think, because for today's episode is about structure and finding how the scriptwriters find the story, do you want to tell us a bit about the structure?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting structure. What I realised, I was watching it yesterday actually. I was watching Legally Blonde and The Proposal. So in The Proposal, you've got Sandra Bullock, who's a very successful job, her publishers, but she's emotionally unavailable, so she can't get attached to anyone. So the whole story is about how she learns to kind of find someone, and she falls in love with her assistant. So she's Canadian. She can't stay in the country because her visa's been rejected. So they're going to be deported and then she thinks, there's a light bulb moment that she has about 10 minutes in, where she decides Andrew could marry her, and that way she'll be able to stay in the country. And she basically blackmails Andrew, or forces Andrew to marry her and go along with it. And then they're at the immigration office and they find out, she finds out for the first time that his parents, and he grew up in Alaska, and so that's where they end up going for the whole weekend. And actually, interestingly, most of the movie is actually in Alaska. So it starts with her job, and then within 20 minutes they're in Alaska. They're with her parents, with his family. And so when all the kind of trouble ensues, and she's kind of doesn't want to get close to anyone, but all these people are being really nice. So yeah, it's really interesting to look at it in that way.
So it did about ticking the boxes, and as far as like when certain things happen along for, like, for example, for the plot twist happens.
Exactly. Yeah, and actually it's what's happening at the moment now. Like the first, you'd call it the 30-page mark. Now it's kind of like 20 minutes was the kind of act one. As like basically 22 minutes. And again, Legally Blonde, it's about the same. It's about 20 minutes. So they're off to Alaska, and then an hour in, actually, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but an hour in, the parents kind of suggest that they get married there that weekend. So that's another thing that they got to deal with, and they actually kind of they do go with it, but I won't spoil the exact ending. But yeah, it's a really interesting one to look at.
Okay, well, thanks very much. I think you gave a good sense of what the structure was. Stephan, what's your script for today?
My script is one of my favourite films. It's Brick. Brick is a modern classic noir. It doesn't try to subvert the genre at all. It really much sticks entirely to the conventions of the noir genre. You've got your detective who gets increasingly less well and more beaten up as the story progresses. You have your femme fatale. The mystery unfolds, and we learn at the same time as the protagonist what happens. It was Rian Johnson's first script. And the way he wrote it was also interesting because he didn't really have screenwriting software or anything. So rather than write it out several times with all the edits on his typewriter, he wrote it as a novella first, trying to stay true as possible to the tropes and themes established by writers like Raymond Chandler. And then once he'd written his novella and was happy with it, then he turned it into a script. And the script was very well adhered to towards the end. There were very few changes. I think there was a couple of changes depending on what side of the road the lamppost was on, so they had to film it slightly differently. But other than that, it was very much true to the original screenplay. Structurally, like I said, it adheres very well to the noir tropes. You've got your build-up, the mystery is established very quickly, and then the clues start to unfold one after the other. And towards the end, obviously you've got the final twist at the end. Obviously not going to reveal it. It is a mystery and definitely worth watching. And Gary hasn't seen it yet, so I'm looking forward to his reaction. But it's very tightly structured, very tightly scripted. There's very little waste to it. It's very, very tight. Everything you see is important. Everything you don't see it for a reason. And the reason is it's irrelevant to the story.
Well, thanks very much for breaking down the films as far as structure goes, and let's move on to the first topic.